Very good evening to all of you once again. So we are going to start the first session of this uh, event, that is supply chain management and the systems, from 5th to 9th January 2022. So we are slightly delayed by the schedule. So let us start the session. So the supply chain management and the logistics management, though they are used interchangeably by many people, but they are not one and the same. So the readers may probably go through certain literature depending, given the time frame, we have just 45 minutes to cover certain fundamentals that should help you to go through the ERP system. So the supply chain management, as Professor B.J. Rao was, nicely describing about the supply chain, starting from the suppliers to the end users. There are, a lot of stakeholders in between, and there is a lot of coordination among various players to make the product available, at the right time, the right location, in right quantities, at the right price, and so on. So this is what is, if you see the entire production and the operations practices, the role of supply chain management is, is really very very macroscopic, and that is why the industry, or maybe the concept itself has its wide acceptance across the industries, and the subject itself, or the concept itself, is widely practiced, not only by the academicians but also by the practitioners. And since the time is quite short, that is 45 minutes, so I'll try to see to that the flavor of the supply chain management is given to you. We are very much thankful to all the participants for taking interest in this particular course, or maybe particular webinar, irrespective of, we are not very sure how many are really into the operations, how many are from other areas, but given the interest, we are really thankful to all of you. So not to spend more time on this basic things, let us get into the topic. uh, Hopefully this will set the tone for other sessions that are scheduled for you over the next 4 days. Okay, so the supply chain, by definition, starting from the supplier to the customer's customer, how the product flows from one place to the other place, and how the finance flows, how the information flows. This is actually very, very interesting as far as the multiple things are concerned: the material, the finance, the information, the knowledge. Of course, that is a very, very neglected part of it. So, the basic objective of any supply chain is to deliver, the value to the customer or to the end user, right? So, how is the demand fulfilled in a typical supply chain? If you see, starting from the supplier to the customer's customer, we can probably categorize, with respect to various segments, right? So the segments could be, let's say, the procurement cycle, that is from the supplier to the manufacturer. Then from the manufacturer to the distributor could be the manufacturing cycle. From the distributor to the retailers, that could be the replenishment cycle. And from the retailer to the customer, that you can say the customer order cycle. Okay, these are the four different cycles by which the material flows in the forward direction, and the finance flows in the backward direction, and information flows in both the directions, right? Whether you are a student or a researcher or an academician or from industry, more or less, these are the few things that we all experience as an individual, as a customer. We experience all these things. Okay, now the question here is, these are the few things, the typical cycles that are basically covered in the entire supply chain. This is one school of thought. This is one school of thought by which the material is delivered to the end user. and the basic objective is to maximize the customer value, to maximize the customer value. But other point in time, if you see that it could be the push based or it could be the pull based, right? In the sense, let's say a grocery product that we are all purchasing from, let's say from the grocery stores, maybe a kirana store available in a typical street, or it could be, purchasing from, let's say, from e-commerce stores or some other platform. So the grocery, or you can say the vegetable or the fruit or things like that, are basically actually there is a demand. There is a demand already there. So people have to see to that there is a demand, and anticipating the demand, they need to produce. They need to produce because there is a demand available in the market, right? And this is basically one view that is driven by the forecast. Here, if you want to be little efficient, right, you have to be very good in the forecast. So you have to see the market condition, how many competitors are there, what price the customer can really afford. So a lot of forecasting comes into picture in this particular aspect. So this is happening with respect to the product is produced in anticipation of the customer demand, right? And other point in time, if you see, there is some production that is happening in response to the customer demand. These are not the same thing. Especially one is directed by the demand, and the other one is directed by the demand response. How you respond once you receive the demand from the market. You don't really produce the full component or maybe the entire assembled item or the product as such. You may need to procure the pieces and or maybe assembled items, small components to keep in the store. As and when the demand comes, you probably fabricate and deliver to the market in a reasonably in a good lead time. So the thing here is basically when you go for the push based, so the lead time is very relatively low. But if in case you want to decrease it further, you cannot really make it very low, and you cannot really spend more money for it, right? Let's say grocery product, let's say rice. So we cannot really spend a huge amount of money for this, even though there is a lead time that is higher. So people have to tolerate that particular lead time because the basic objective here is to exploit the economies of scale. Basic objective here is to economies of scale that needs to be exploited, because the volume should be very large so that you can have large scale production and per unit cost should come down. This is what actually is the strategy that is driven by the push. The other point in time, let's say somebody is producing a very high end car and he cannot really produce some hundreds of cars and keep in the store, so it is very unlikely that it will be sold. So in such cases, what happens is that basically people have to go by the pool based strategy where they will be reacting to the demand, and naturally the lead time will be very high. The lead time will be very high, right? So irrespective of the circumstances, whether it's a push based or a pull based, so the supply chain needs to generate some surplus. And what is that surplus? That surplus is nothing but the customer is perceiving what the product is, and what is the amount that the customer is really paying for. So it is like a total cost ownership that the customer is paying, could be related to the product pricing plus the the cost that is attributed to procure the particular product. So that also has some cost. So now if you ask how really we evaluate the customer value, so this is a very very big issue. Normally we can perceive the value can be perceived, but if you want to quantify this, it is not a very simple thing to quantify. But of course, you take any metric maybe related to American Production and Inventory Control Society or the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals. You take any metric, so supply chain cost you can explicitly you can quantify. So there is no issue about it. But the customer value, that may that may not be very easy to assess. So whether it is a push based or the pull based, what is that we can probably see in this beautiful picture that is given by Chopra and Mendel. This is a very nice book, and in case you are a practitioner or an academician or a researcher, irrespective of your profile, so this is a good book. Maybe you can probably refer, and with a lot of quantitative and analytical orientation that is available in this particular book. Along with this, you can also refer to Simchi Levy and Philips Kaminsky and Ravi Shankar. That is also a very nice book from the practitioner's viewpoint. So to get yourself acquainted with certain other things related to the theoretical perspectives and how things are practiced in the market. So broadly, what I've said is two things. That is, one is with respect to one is with respect to what I can say is basically with respect to the push, and the other one is with respect to the pull, right? So push, if you see, the basic objective of the push-based supply chain is basically to exploit the economies of scale. So economies of scale means you are basically becoming an efficient supply chain where your objective is to basically cut down the cost, right? That is the basic objective of the supply chain, which is directed at the push-based, push-based practices. But if you see the pull-based practices, the basic objective is to control the time, how to reduce the time, right? So response time is something which is very crucial. The response time, how quickly you can respond to the market. But when try to quickly respond to the market, then what happens is that the cost will be rising there. But the customer will be willing to pay that particular price because he is getting in a short span of time. But here in this case, if you want to reduce it, you can probably do that, but you cannot really spend more money to control the time, because that choice is not there, because people do not want to pay more for it. Let's say the common salt that we use, okay, so let's say it is 20 rupees per kg, right? So there is a huge demand, but can you make it really 50 rupees per kg? So that is something that we need to think about it, right? So may not be always possible due to the some kind of social responsibility, some kind of government regulation. We have to stick to all those kind of things to see how we can manage with respect to the price as well as the time. So these are the two important parameters in any typical supply chain. And then comes is the next issue is basically the when we talk about the push and the pull based. So now there is a trade-off. So how we can make these two things happen? So let's say you are a push based, then what about your architecture or the network? If you are a pull based, what should be your network or the architecture of the typical supply chain? So you may have a supply chain already in place. In case you need, you may probably dismantle certain things, and you can go for a kind of a new reformed one. But the thing is that there could be a danger that how this potential or the redesigned supply chain is going to react for you, right? Anyway, we have two considerations, especially you also have green related consideration, because these days we talk about the circular economy, we talk about meeting the green related restrictions, because a lot of environmental issues that are going to happen, and we are all accountable for that. So all these issues we may have, and you can say that efficiency, responsiveness, the green issues, all this you can probably mix it up and say this is a hybrid supply chain to some extent here and there. We need to see to that we are probably fulfilling the request, fulfilling the certain regulatory requirement and certain time related requirement, certain price related requirement, and to make it a kind of a hybrid supply chain, right? So this could be really a very, very challenging task. Now the question here is, can a company be partly pull and partly push? Yes, of course, a company can become partly push and partly pull depending on the market segmentation, and the market segmentation should come through the proper forecast. And forecasting is something that in analytical framework we have a lot of sophisticated models available. We have starting from the basic regression model to auto-regressive integrated moving average method. We have so many simulation models to have a good forecast in place to segregate what could be the right push-pull boundary. So the extremes are basically 100, 0, and 0, 100, right? And if you see in between 50-50, maybe a company can become 50% pull and 50% push, or maybe 60-40, 40-60, 70-30, 30-70, whatever. So these are the few things that we can probably take into consideration, right? So the basic issues where the company should produce, where to deliver, in what capacities, who will be transporting, how to transport, whether we should go for the multimodal transportation or we should go for a or we'll go by the road mode of transportation, or maybe the seaways will be using more. So this is actually very interesting thing. Maybe people, those who are the researchers, can probably think about it. We in India, are having a very large sea coast, but are we really using that particular sea coast? We broadly depend on the road mode of transportation or the road transportation for delivering the goods, especially. But this particular thing is, not very widely used, but we have a lot of potential. Probably the researchers can think about it and use some kind of, simulation model or maybe mathematical model to see to that, to what extent we can probably control, the transportation cost, right? For an example, if you start from, let's say, Mumbai and you are delivering to, let's say, Delhi. So earlier days there are a lot of the what should I say, octroi gates and all that. People used to pay a lot of money at the gates, and a lot of money were spent, and a lot of delays, right? Some 25-30 gates, and each gate, if you spend some 10 minutes, so 260 minutes, so maybe roughly 4 or 5 hours. And as such, on average, a typical Indian vehicle covers some 300 to 400 kilometers per day, contrary to US and other developed countries, some 1,000 kilometers per day. So these are the certain issues we have, especially in the logistics sector of the Indian subcontinent. Probably as a researcher, as an analyst, as an academician, as a practitioner, we need to think about it so that we can probably control certain cost, because the way the fuel prices are increasing in the international market, we need to think about it, and we need to see, because fuel is it is not renewable. So given a time frame, if it gets exhausted, then what is going to happen to the entire logistics industry? We need to think about it, right? Then the uncertainties, as I said, there are a lot of uncertainties in terms of demand, in terms of prices, in terms of exchange rate fluctuation, in terms of the competition in the market. All these uncertainties we have to deal very, very systematically. So how to deal with these uncertainties? So what probably can do is, here you can get the data into, consideration, where you can see the proper analytics of the customers, the markets, or the market segmentation. So what kind of people, people, all of us need not really worry about the price. All of us need not worry about the time. All of us need not really worry about the innovativeness. All of us need not look at the quality of the product. So there are different types of customers, different types of sentiment, different types of purchasing power, and all that kind of stuff. So if you can systematically analyze those things, and we can see, if you have the data, we can probably segregate, and from there we can have a very good insight. And what is the insight is basically the implied demand uncertainty. So now we are seeing at the macro level. So if you want to see at the micro level, then what is going to happen is we have to go a little, we have to dig down, and we have to systematically see who are the customers are driven by the price, who are the customers are driven by the cost, or maybe time, who are the customers are driven by the quality, who are the people looking for the innovativeness. They probably discard their old product and purchase a new product. So we have to systematically see, in case as an analyst, as a supply chain practitioner, we could see this particular uncertainties, then what will happen is that we can probably target the market according to the requirement, and the uncertainty part may be reduced. But uncertainty, as you all know, that it doesn't come with the probability, or maybe the predicted probability is very, very very difficult. So it is not that easy to assess. But anyway, as an analyst, we can probably think about it. So how we can control this particular uncertainty over a period of time. Now, if you further go down in the supply chain, so there you will be finding the procurement and the production. The other speakers will be talking about those things in more detail, but I'm not getting into those things. So what is that I can probably say here? So once you get the material, you have a design, you have the procurement, you have the production, And the production, necessarily we are talking about the aggregate production plan. And the aggregate production plan, we can go for something called, the mixed strategy. This is actually very, very important. The mixed strategy. The mixed strategy is basically the analytical framework where we have, the linear programming to be used in the process, so that we can probably, minimize the cost, and we can the maximize the revenue and the profit, right? So this is one thing. The other things could be, it depends on the, the farm. Sometimes the market is good, people hire. Sometimes the market is bad, people fire. Or maybe, layoff, what should I say, they retrench people. And sometimes there are some companies, they basically, tend to keep the employees irrespective of the market demand. So they're very, kind of, the companies who are very much loyal to their employees or whatever, they do not want their employees to leave, right? Because the market fluctuations could be temporary, like the inflation. It's kind of a, short run, fluctuation. So they want to keep them, and when the market grows, they will be very much useful. But in case they leave, and so getting the right people for the right job could be extremely difficult task. So that is another school of thought. And another school of thought is basically the, you constantly produce, you don't ask anyone to leave. Okay, you constantly produce irrespective of the market demand. So there is a danger. The potential danger is maybe your inventory will be piling off. If you don't, look at the market, and you constantly use your manpower, your raw material, your all other resources, if you use, then constantly your inventory will be piling off, given, the market condition. If the market is good, it will be released. If the market is bad, it will be piling off, right? These are the few things as a farm we need to think about it. Now, the next task is, after we go for the production, then comes is, maybe you can think about the procurement. There, the economic order quantity comes into picture. If you are delivering the material to your downstream member, maybe distributor or the retailer, or maybe industrial customer, or whomsoever it is, then probably the economic order quantity comes into picture, right? So economic order quantity, I'm not talking about the economic order quantity as a kind of a, that rule that we have been studying. I'm saying this: can we use the economic order quantity UQ as a kind of a postponement strategy? As a postponement strategy. So that means we are delaying certain things. So there is a demand, but we do not really place the order. We delay some time in between. We take some time to release the order. So if you do so, then what will happen is that we may have more order at a given point in time, and the procurement and the production and the delivery may be happening, properly or scientifically. You can reduce the cost, you can economically, or you can exploit your economies of scale. That may happen, but one potential danger is that your lead time for some people, some customers will be higher. So there is no trade-off, I should say. We have to see to that. That is what I said, the uncertainties. So who are the people needing less time? Who are the people can probably afford some time, but they wanted less price? So we have to systematically assess this particular situation, so that what is going to happen is, basically we can probably estimate the uncertainty, and those uncertainties will be, or uncertainty assessment, probably we cannot really quantify. It may be very, very difficult, because the predicted probability versus unpredicted probability, so things are not that easy. But still, then we have a lot of forecasting methods that you can probably use. Could be, for the cross-sectional data, or for the time series data, or whatever it is. So you can probably do that sort of, estimation. To see to that, we can control the uncertainties. So basically, my point here is the economic order quantity that we are talking here at this particular stage. So that is, we are using as a kind of a strategy. We are using as a kind of a strategy, where the strategy is coming from the aggregation. The strategy is basically coming from the aggregation. So we are aggregating the things. We are basically aggregating the things, or aggregating the orders, aggregating the deliveries, and delivering it. So as I said, there could be potential advantage, potential disadvantage. So as a manager, as a researcher, as an analyst, we need to see how to have a trade-off in between the two. So one could be directed by the efficiency consideration, one could be directed by the responsiveness consideration. So the drawing the right push-pull boundary and doing the things, positioning the things according to the requirement is the right choice. Then comes, as far as the procurement is concerned, we can probably, either make it or buy it. Okay, so there is another session on that. I'm just setting the tone for certain, topics, so you'll have more insights about it. So now the question is here in this case. So when you go for a make or buy decision, so not only, depending on the market or the supplier price, the quality related cost, the support that you receive from the suppliers, supplier capabilities, we also should see, what is the part we are investing and what is that is, the net present value and what is that is the internal rate of return. So all this financial aspect also should come into picture. Let's say one school of thought is, let's say you are going to buy a component and what is the price that you are paying. And other point in time, you may be thinking that let's do it in-house. Then what is that you are investing, and what is that you are getting in next 5-6 days or 5-6 years or 10 years, and what is that amount, and what is that investment that you are making in place. So is it worth investing, right? So those kind of things we should systematically analyze by using the data that is available. And in case you are going for buying a typical component rather than producing in house, then probably you can think about some contract. So what could be the potential contract that you can put in place, right? So we can go for the buyback contract, you can go for the revenue sharing contract, we can go for the quantity flexibility kind of contract, or any kind of hybrid contract that you can probably go for. So contracts are very very prominent in some industry. Let's say in the let's say in the perishable industry, like newspaper is a classic example. Newspaper is a classic example. Let's say end of the day, whatever newspapers are not sold, nobody will be really interested next day, right? Because if today is 5th, so we should have all read our newspaper in the morning. So nobody will be really interested in this 5th newspaper tomorrow on 6th. So it is very difficult to sell to somebody. Similar, let's say bakery items, or say any other perishable item, it's very difficult to sell, right? So in such cases, can we have a little buyback contract? It is not that you'll be getting the actual price or the original price, maybe some 20%, 30% if you get, that eventually will lead to more demand, and that demand will be, partly compensating the requirement of the entire supply chain. Now, the question here is when it comes to the supply chain, there are several people have their own interest in the supply chain. So they should actually think, or maybe it could be the duty, of the, manufacturer, or maybe the focal firm, to see to that more or less everybody is happy in the supply chain, right? Sometimes what happens is that the retailer may be, getting more benefit. Sometimes the distributor may be getting more benefit. We do not know that. So in such a case, one person's more benefit may not be taken lightly by the other stakeholder. So this kind of situation, if you see and you go for a typical contract, the supply chain will be benefited. The supply chain contract or maybe supply chain benefit will be remaining the same, and proportionately it will be distributed by some people, and some people will be getting more, some people will be getting less. There probably the focal firm should see to that, and reasonably some profit should go to the respective stakeholders. A classic example probably I can give here. Let's say you take any push based supply chain. Let's say the classic example you could say probably, let's say, rice, okay, or maybe wheat, or maybe pulses, whatever you take. So let us think the original supplier is the farmer, right? The original supplier is the farmer. So what is the cost of, let's say, tur dal, that is 100 rupees in the market, let's say, or 120 rupees in the market. So out of 120 rupees, what percentage is really going to the farmer? Okay, is it worth paying? So let's say 30%, 40%, we do not know that. Maybe extreme cases 50%. So is 50% is the right price for the farmer, right? So whose responsibility is this to see, right? So in this case, actually, unorganized farms or the meals or whatever, they will not be able to do that because this market is very much unorganized. So in case of organized market, let's say ITC or some other people, some other farms, they're procuring and doing that. So they need to, they can probably estimate who is getting what. But in case of unorganized market, it is very difficult to assess all that kind of thing. But anyway, this is one thing that the supply chain can probably think about it. Then comes the transportation, who is, even today, according to many people, logistics means the transportation, but that is actually, transportation is one of the parts of the entire, logistics. So it can, the more things can happen in logistics. Could be value addition, could be some kind of, postponement practices, right? So the classic postponement practices is happening in the paint industry. Earlier days, what was happening, since the time is short, let me try to give the overview. So earlier days, the companies or the paint companies, they're basically producing, the colors or the paints, and according to the requirement. Let's say somebody wants a gray color with some shade, somebody wants a pink color with some shade. Okay, somebody may want a white color, the cream color with some kind of checks or something like some design. So if you see, let's say there are 10 colors, there are 10 textures, there are 10, 10 sets, 10 into 10 into 10, so that is 1000. So can you imagine a company or a firm who is basically producing this paint, 10 into 10 into 10, some 1000 denominations, 1000 varieties of paints he or she needs to store in the inventory. So what is the guarantee that all those 1000 varieties of the items will be sold? It is very, very unlikely, right? So people took the advantage of the, the postponement. That is, you can say probably the logistics postponement, where you can do one thing. You can have a white color or the gray color, and you can have different colors. So, and some textures ready. As and when the demand was coming, let's say somebody wants a pink color with some shade, like a star-like design, and with some shade, different shades will be there. So that small operation could be, could be done at the warehouse level or the distributor level. If the retailer is a big player, he also can do it. It's a small tinting operation. This small tinting operation can give the product to the, to the respective customer, and the inventory will be drastically can be controlled. So this kind of things probably happen. So logistics not exactly the transportation. It is much more, but the network that we basically use. So could be, we can probably relate it to the operations research, where we have various transportation models we use, and we use the cross-docking locations. Let's say for international business, as far as the India is concerned, we basically use Singapore, and we use Sri Lankan airport, the seaports, basically for the cross-docking locations. So then it comes to something that whether you are directly procuring, or you are procuring through an intermediate site, or you are taking it to a particular location, from there you are distributing using a milk run. So like how the e-commerce firms are practicing this particular one, that's basically a part of our transportation network. So if I give you the overview that what I've spoken so far, I have spoken to you about the facilities, I've spoken to you about the inventory, then the sourcing, then the transportation, then now I'll be talking something about the information. So information flow, as you know, the distributor gives information to the retailer. Retailer passes the information to the distributor. Now the kind of trust, because this is about the data. So data is something is changing the market entirely. You can say about machine learning or artificial intelligence. The data is something that is a core, right? So this way, if the distributor is not properly cooperating to the retailer, if the retailer is not properly cooperating with the distributor, then what happens? Data is not collected properly. The data is something which is not very scientific. So in such a case, whatever forecasting you do, that will not be very much correct. So given having said that, no forecasting is correct. No forecasting is correct. So no forecasting is correct. Having said that, and we are getting some data that is not of also good quality. So there is again further problem. So this problem, that problem, and the forecasting error will be higher. So 30-40% forecasting error, the forecast is not going to work. Really, the forecast is not going to really help the supply chain. That is something what we need to think about it. Then the what is essential is basically to control this particular aspect. We need proper coordination, and the coordination comes from proper understanding, building the trust in the process, and looking at how the supply chain can evolve over a period of time with good revenue and the profit, and then the supply chain can probably share with others, like like a bonus sharing, some dividend sharing, some kind of sharing, so that people will be happy in the supply chain. So uncertainty related issues can be probably reduced. And this typical effect, if we term it in the supply chain language, you can probably say it in a bullwhip effect. So what happens? You think about it. Let's say there is a change in the price in the market. So how we react, whether we want it or not, immediately, but we still purchase. Then that purchase, let's say I want one, I purchase two. So similar, looking at me, the retailer may be very happy. He will be purchasing, let's say 10. Looking at the retailer, the distributor may be purchasing 100. So looking at the distributor, the manufacturer may be purchasing in a truckload of material. So now, eventually, when it comes to the market, the demand may not be there in the market, right? So this kind of situation is nothing but the bullwhip effect, and it was originally contributed by Lee et al. I think in 1997. So this is actually one thing that we need to see, and the causes are basically the price fluctuations. Okay, so and the batch ordering, and some kind of rationing in the process, some kind of even the bonus sharing and all that may also, or maybe target. If the target you give, that you give to the to the people who are in the marketing, so this may also have some impact on the bullwhip effect. So the bullwhip effect, it's like a wave that will go up and up. So it will, if you go upstream, so it will be going up and down. So now the question is how to control that, right? So this is one thing. Now, if you see the downstream part, you have to think about the reverse bullwhip effect. So that means the bullwhip effect is very low at the customer side, but it will be very high on the it will be very low at the supplier side, but it will be very high at the customer side. It's a reverse. So how to control that? What could be the potential problem? Like we can say, those who are from economics background or econometric background may be knowing the wholesale, price index and the customer, consumer price index, that is the CPI. So this kind of relationship, if you can establish, you can see probably the bullwhip effect and the reverse bullwhip effect that may be there in place. So the performance measures, that is the driver wise, we can have the measurement, and here in this particular case, we can have the we can refer to American American Production and Inventory Control Society. We can refer to Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals metric, that is Supply Chain Operations Reference, and there we have the various measurements or the metrics. Metric means something that can be quantified. So in operations in the supply chain area, basically we say, if you want to measure something, you have to quantify it. Unless you quantify it, you cannot really measure it, right? So measurement and the quantification, they go hand by hand. So that is what is in operations and the supply chain management we basically are interested in. That is why in terms of operations research or maybe the simulation, we are very much interested in the quantitative techniques as such. Since the time is relatively very relatively small, I could not give you that analytical flavor more. But having said that, I have given you little orientation for the forecasting and the optimization techniques and so on. Those who are interested, probably as far as the students are concerned, they can probably take it further and try to see to that how analytically these things could be used in the research or maybe could be practiced. So to consolidate, so I spoke about the finance, the facility, the inventory, the transportation, information, sourcing, and the pricing. These are pricing, of course, I could not touch much. Pricing and the revenue management is very, very scientific. All of us might have experienced something called dynamic pricing, differential pricing. When you fly, people sitting side by side might have paid a differential amount. So what is the reason? Somebody might have booked it well in advance, and somebody might have booked it, at the nick of the time. So this is actually something that when you book at the nick of the time, then the companies or the airlines, they basically tab this as a kind of a business customer, right, or business traveler. So that way your charges will be almost double, or maybe sometimes it may be triple, right? So these are the few things. This is a very nice topic. Those who are interested, especially people who are with a little mathematical knowledge. So pricing and the revenue management is one of the important topics, and this is a very nice topic as far as the optimization techniques are concerned. So these are the few things from my side, and if you are more interested, you can get into certain references. Already I have spoken about the book that is Chopra and Mendel. And the one Harvard case, if you're interested, you can probably Google the term. That is Marcel Fisher, 1997. What is the right supply chain for a product? And there is one thing that is business analytics use in the supply chain. The contingent effect of business process maturity. That is one good paper. How the supply chains evolve over a period of time. So if you see when a firm starts, it will be basically managing the order. But gradually over a period of time, it will be getting into the collaboration. So that is what is the journey. That is what is the journey by any typical supply chain, right? And there are a few other, as I said, Simsy Levy and Kaminsky, Philips Kaminsky, Simsy Levy, Edith Simsy Levy, and Ravi Shankar. This is also a good book from the practitioner's viewpoint. If you have more interest, you can probably get into this. So these are the few things I just wanted to deliver from my side. And since we are running short of time, quickly, if we have any questions, I'll quickly address, and we can probably stop here. Venkat sir and Achalu sir, can you please help me to see the questions? If any questions raised by the participants, can you please?
Yeah, sure.
I don't see any questions as such. Yes. So I could see one question here. Program evaluation, the review technique. Yes, that is basically the most likely time, the pessimistic time, and the optimistic time. So whatever you calculate, the most likely time, that is actually given by the gamma distribution. Okay, so that is one thing. And the critical path method, that is basically the path that is the longest path, right? That's the longest path. So we have to shift the shortest path. So for the shortest path, there are other algorithms available that you can say the Dijkstra algorithm. There is another, that is basically used in the computer science. There is Dijkstra algorithm that you can use. You can also use transportation method. That is, you can say, starting from the northwest corner rule to, Vogel's approximation. There are multiple methods available. So please be in touch. Maybe you will see what is that is exactly you're looking for. In case you are a researcher, will be definitely helping you in the, down the line. Yes. So any further questions? I didn't see any further questions. Okay, so I think we're running short of time. So we started a bit late, so I am on time as far as my delivery, duration is concerned. So thank you very much for your kind attention. Now we'll be moving into the second session, that is by Mr. Partha, and this particular broadcast is going to end now. So thank you very much, everyone, for your kind attention. Please be in touch and hang on. Please don't go. Try to attend all the sessions for an effective, learning from from all the sessions. And looking forward to see you again in the next session. Thank you very much. So let us end the session now. Thank you very much once again, and wish you all the very best.
Yeah.